Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today we will be discussing about our discussion. I'm Faradia Anini Humaira from the government team.
I'm
I'm
Nikita
Nazri.
Maxine Parsons from the government team.
I'm Nazrul Ibnu from the government team.
I am Diayu Puspitantias from the opposite teams.
Pramuada Dwi Ramadhani from the opposite team.
And I'm Rinda from the opposition team.
Today we will be discussing about why social media is a greater harm than traditional political corruption. Start from the speaker one, Nazrul Ibnu. You may take your time.
Tes. Ada suaranya?
Ada.
Okay. My name is Nazril and I'm from the government team. Today, our side believes that social media has become a greater threat to democracy than traditional political corruption. First, let me define the key terms. Democracy is a system where people choose their leaders and influence political decisions through voting and public participation. Social media refers to platforms such as TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. And traditional political corruption refers to practices such as bribery, vote buying, embezzlement, and the abuse of political power for personal gain. Our side acknowledges that corruption is a serious problem. However, we believe that social media is now a greater threat because it influences how millions of people think, what they believe, and how they make political decisions. Today, I will present one main argument that is social media is a greater threat to a democracy because it can manipulate public opinion on a massive scale. We people need accurate information so they can make good decisions when choosing leaders, evaluating policies, and participating in public discussion. The problem is that today, many people get most of their political information from social media. When people want to know about election, politicians, or public issues, they often open TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, or maybe YouTube before reading the newspaper or watching the news. This means social media has become one of the most powerful sources of information in society. However, social media is not designed to promote truth. It is designed to keep people engaged. Its algorithms promote content that gets more views, like, comment, and share. Because of this, emotional and sensational content often spread faster than accurate information. A shocking lie can go viral in few hours, while the truth may receive much less attention. As a result, misinformation can spread to millions of people very quickly. When people repeatedly see the same information online, they may start believing, even if it's false. This affects how they see political issues, candidates, and even democratic institutions. As a result, voters may make political decisions based on misinformation rather than facts. And when people vote based on false information, democracy becomes weaker. This is why social media is dangerous. It does not only influence politicians, it influences ordinary citizens directly. Now, let's compare this with traditional political corruption. Corruption is harmful because politicians may steal public money, abuse their power, or make unfair decisions. However, corruption usually involves a limited number of people. The damage is often concentrated within certain institutions or government offices. Social media is different. Social media can influence millions of citizens at the same time. Corruption damages part of the democratic system. Social media damages the decision-making of the people who make democracy possible in the first place. In other words, corruption affects the government. Social media affect the minds of the voters. And if voters can no longer distinguish between facts and false information, democracy loses its foundation. Without informed citizens, elections become less meaningful, public discussions become less productive, and democratic decisions become less reliable. Therefore, the threat created by social media is broader and more difficult to control than traditional political corruption. Today, we have shown that social media has become a greater threat to democracy because it has the power to manipulate public opinion on a massive scale. It spreads misinformation quickly, influences how people think, and affects how they make political decisions. While corruption remains a serious issue, it usually affects a limited number of politicians and institutions. Social media affects millions of citizens and weakens the foundation of the democracy itself. For all these reasons, we strongly support this motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the government team. Hello, my name is Dia Pitantias and I'm first speaker of the opposition team. And I stand against this motion because the government team argues that social media has become a greater threat to democracy because it spreads misinformation and influence public opinion. While understand those concerns, we do not believe that social media is greater threat than traditional political corruption. Our teams believe that social media is not inherently harmful. In fact, it can strengthen democracy in many ways. The, the government side mainly focuses on the negative effect of social media, but they ignore the fact that social media also provides many benefits that support democratic values. First of all, social media give ordinary people a voice. In the past, political discussions were often controlled by politicians, large media companies, or other powerful groups. Today, anyone with internet access can share opinions, discuss public issues, and participate in political conversation. This is important because democracy depends on citizen participation. The more people are involved in discussion about politic issues, the stronger democracy becomes. The politic and social media allows people to express their views, raise concern, and engage with political issues more easily than ever before. In addition, social media increase transparency. Many cases, corruption, abuse of power, and government misconduct become known to the public because information spreads online. Citizens can share evidence, raise awareness, and draw attention to important issues. Journalists and activists also use social media to expose wrongdoing and hold leaders accountable. Without social media, many of these issues might never receive public attention. Therefore, social media can actually help protect democracy by making government more transparent and accountable to people. The government focuses heavily on misinformation. We agree that misinformation is a problem. However, misinformation is not something that only exists because social media. False information exists long before social media through rumors, propaganda, and biased news sources. The real problem is not the platform itself, but how people choose to use it. Social media can spread misinformation, but it can also spread accurate information. People are not forced to believe everything they see online. They can compare sources, check facts, or discuss everything each other's. And let us compare social media with traditional political corruption. Corruption is harmful in every situation. When politicians accept bribes, buy votes, steal public money, or abuse their power, democracy becomes weaker. There is no positive side to corruption because there is always put personal interest above the interest of public. Social media is different. It can be used negative, but it also be used positive. It can educate citizens to encourage participation and expose corruption and strengthen public awareness. Unlike the corruption, social media is not automatically harmful. For the reason, we reject claim that social media has become greater threat to democracy than traditional political corruption. So social media certainly has challenges, but it also creates opportunities for citizens to participate in democracy, access information, or hold leaders accountable. Democracy becomes stronger when people have platform to express their voices and engage in public discussion. Social media provide that. And in conclusion, while social media can sometimes create problems, it can also strengthen democracy. Corruption, on the other hand, it always harmful and always weakens democratic system. Therefore, we firmly believe that social media is not greater threat to democracy than traditional political corruption. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I state my argument, let me introduce myself. My name is Nikki, and I'm from the government side as the second speaker. I stand in support of this motion that social media has become a greater threat to democracy than traditional political corruption. I will first refute the argument that was previously stated by the first speaker of the opposition team. Corruption is agreed to be harmful in many ways, as already mentioned by the opposition side. However, the case here is to compare the greater threat between social media and traditional political corruption. Even though social media could strengthen democracy, give ordinary people a voice, and increase transparency, there could be certain individuals or even groups that use social media to act as the imposter among the society, to weaken democracy and influence people into thinking what is good for them. Transparency could be affected if that is indeed the case, because these imposters can provide false information about a certain matter, which the information itself is intended to maintain the government's image to the public. Also, not all ordinary people can express their voice through social media because they don't have the knowledge to do so. And for the people who can, their voice is not that easy to be noticed or listened. Even if some of them goes viral, if their voice is canceling the government's decision, it is possible for the government to silence their voice, either by bribing them or even worse, harming them in a way. Through social media, the government can easily find one's personal information to be used against them. So in this case, social media is way more harmful than we think it is. Some information on social media has been designed to facilitate the implementation of government's programs, regardless of whether it will ultimately benefit the citizens or not. Traditional corruption happens in a smaller circle of people. Certain people are bribed to support the government's matters, decisions, and programs, compared to social media, which can reach a wider audience, even internationally. Larger groups of people can be influenced to support a certain matter, which could lead to corruption and be harmful to the citizens themselves. In this case, uneducated citizens are the target. They are unaware of how politics works and just accept the information from social media at face value without double checking the facts. Hoax is a huge problem of using social media. Even if this can be avoided by double checking the facts, there is no doubt that people still believe false information. Traditional corruption in the form of cash bribes has now evolved into covert in online campaigns financing to hire online influencers. This creates the illusion of public support for corrupt politicians or certain figures. perpetrators on social media can easily conceal their identities or launder money through digital assets and the cryptocurrency ecosystem, which quickly cross national borders. There are the reasons why we agree that social media is a greater threat than traditional political corruption to democracy. The impact of social media is more visible. The perpetrators are more cunning because they can easily hide their identity and get away with what they did. Perpetrators can sow discord among citizens to benefit themselves, which leads to an undermined democracy. In conclusion, corruption is indeed a problem that we are aware of, but corruption through social media is way more dangerous since perpetrators could easily flee and create propaganda. It also includes a larger group of people and could cause bigger impacts on society. Therefore, we stand on the motion that social media is a greater threat to democracy than traditional political corruption. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Wanda Dwi Ramadhani, the second speaker of the opposition team. The government team claims that social media has become a greater threat to democracy because it spreads misinformation, reaches a wider audience, and allows any anonymous actors to manipulate public opinion. However, we strongly reject this claim. Our main assertion is clear. Traditional political corruption remains a greater and more dangerous threat to democracy because it directly controls outcomes, not just influences opinions. To begin, the government team argues that social media is dangerous because it spreads misinformation and shapes how people think. While this is true to some extent, the reasoning they present is incomplete. Influence through misinformation does not automatically eliminate a person's ability to choose. Individuals can still question, verify, and reject what they see online. The impact remains indirect. In contrast, traditional political corruption, such as vote buying, poses a completely different level of threat. Voters are often given money, goods, or incentive, incentives incentive in exchange for their support. This is not persuasion, it is direct control over decision making. The evidence of this is clear in many electoral contexts where financial incentives determine voting behavior. The link back to our argument is straightforward. A system that buys decisions poses a far greater threat than one that merely attempts to influence opinions. The government team claims that social media enables impostors and even the authorities to manipulate narratives and protect their image. However, this argument actually strengthens our position. The success of such manipulation relies heavily on traditional corrupt practices, particularly bribery and abuse of power. When critics are silenced, it is not the platform enforcing the silence, but rather the misuse of authority through intimidation or coercion. This demonstrates that corruption itself is the real mechanism behind the problem. Therefore, social media is not the root of the problem, but merely a tool used by corrupt individuals. This clearly links back to our stance that corruption remains the fundamental danger. The government teams also claim that not everyone can effectively use social media and that many voices are ignored or silenced. While this may be true, the reasoning against fails to address the root cause. Voices are not unheard simply because of the platform, but because of unequal power structures sustained by corruption. Evidence of this can be seen when individuals who criticize authorities face threats or are pressured into silence. This is a clear example of abuse of power, not a failure of social media. The link here is evident. Corruption is what suppresses voices, while social media in many cases actually provides an opportunity to those voices to be expressed in the first place. Additionally, the government emphasizes that social media is more dangerous because it reaches a wider audience. However, reach does not determine the severity of a threat. This line of reasoning is flawed because it focuses on scale rather than impact. While social media can influence large groups of people, its effect remains largely informational. In contrast, traditional political corruption directly alters the structure of democracy. Examples of this can be seen in cases of bribery influencing policy decisions, election manipulation affecting results, and abuse of power weakening institutions. These are not just influence on public perception, but direct change to how democracy functions. The link is clear. Structural damage is far more harmful than widespread influence. The government team also claims that uneducated citizens are more susceptible to misinformation on social media. However, this argument unfairly shifts responsibility away from the system and onto individuals. The reasoning ignores that the fact that such vulnerability often stems from systemic failures caused by corruption, such as a lack of proper education and transparency. Evidence shows that in environment there where governance is weak and corrupt, access to reliable information is limited. Therefore, misinformation has a greater impact not just because of social media, but also because of the conditions created by corruption. These direct supports or claim that corruption poses a deeper and more significant threat. Lastly, the government acknowledges that corruption has evolved to digital forms such as influencer campaigns and cryptocurrency transactions. However, this does not strengthen their argument. Instead, it highlights the adaptability and persistence of corruption across different platforms. This actually supports our stance. Regardless of whether corruption occurs offline or online, the core problem remains the same. Social media is simply a new medium, not a new threat. The link is straightforward. If corruption continues to exist in any form, it remains the primary danger to democracy. In conclusion, while the government has focused on the visibility and reach out social media, it has overlooked the depth and severity of traditional political corruption. While social media may influence opinions, corruption directly controls outcomes, distorts systems, and undermines the very foundation of democracy. It leads to vote buying, bribery, abuse of power, unfair elections, and ultimately a loss of public trust. Therefore, we firmly reaffirm that traditional political corruption poses a greater threat to democracy. Thank you.
Before I begin,
Gimana
let me
tuh?
introduce myself as the third speaker. My name is Faradia, and I'm here to serve on the government side. The opposite team claims that traditional political corruption is a greater threat to democracy rather than social media. They believe that not only does it influence individuals, it also directly controls outcomes. However, individuals are easily influenced, especially by flash information with unknown resource. Which means individuals tend to believe everything that was served to them on a silver platter, not knowing where it comes from as long as it can entertain them. These days, platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, etc. offer short video content which was intended to engage those who use it. People tend to look for something that is practical and fast as it serves entertainment and information without needing constant concentration. Surely, this phenomenon can cause a large scale of misinformation if the individual cannot distinguish between which is true or not. As a result, more people are driven unconsciously to wherever the media has taken them. The short video content is sometimes used to spread false information on platforms and has brought many people to confusion at a fast pace. For example, social media can be used as a tool to provoke an individual or a group to create a massive riot. While the opposite team claims that corruption practices were known to buy support for personal gain, it is important to note that social media has taken a part in this situation. Furthermore, social media has the power to create division within society. Algorithms are designed to show users content that matches their existing interests and beliefs. As a result, people are often trapped in echo chamber where they are repeatedly exposed to the same viewpoint while opposing perspectives are ignored. This environment encourages polarization, making citizens less willing to engage in constructive dialogue. Using platforms that are largely used, corrupt individuals are able to provoke people, persuade people to do dirty works, and one of them is political corruption. Humans are a creation that is known to follow the other, and social media is one of the ways to realize this idea. Surely, to grow something, you need to have a root. And what I'm trying to say here, social media can be cause of human behavior that can lead to bad things like political corruption. Democracy relies on discussion and compromise, but social media often pushes people further apart rather than bringing them together. Not to mention, the growth of artificial intelligence, commonly known as AI, only leads social media to bigger harm. AI has gone through so many developments to the point where it can create misleading information without anyone noticing, and eventually it becomes a threat to the future of humanity. Thus, people have the freedom to create misleading information using AI or any social media platforms. Limiting social media does not mean an act of intimidation, but to control information that we send and receive. While the opposite team claim that corruption suppresses voices and that social media provides opportunity to express emotion, we believe that corruption does not have any correlation with suppressing voices. The traditional political corruption situation cannot be manipulated and has real results which decrease false accusation toward innocent people and allows the public to have an open discussion. Because a single misleading post can reach more individuals in one day than a corrupt political may influence in years. Social media poses a greater threat than a traditional political corruption because of its speed and scale. Political corruption is often limited to specific institutions, officials, or regions. In contrast, social media can spread the ideas, opinions, and narratives across millions of people within minutes. The ability to affect such a larger audience simultaneously makes social media a much broader and more dangerous force. Social media also affect democratic participation by prioritizing popularity over expertise. On these platforms, the most visible voices are not necessarily the most informed ones. Individuals with little knowledge of politics can gain enormous influence simply because their content is entertaining or emotionally appealing. Consequently, public opinion may be shaped by influencers, trends, or viral content rather than by factual analysis and informed debate. This weakens the quality of democratic decision making. Addition, social media has significant effects on mental health, particularly among younger generation. Constant exposure to sensationalist news, political conflicts, and emotionally charged content can create anxiety, stress, and fear. Citizens who are overwhelmed by information may become politically apathetic or disengage from civic participation altogether. A healthy democracy requires active and informed citizens, but social media often contribute to emotional exhaustion rather than meaningful engagement. Finally, unlike traditional political corruption, which can often be investigated through legal institutions and anti-corruption agencies, harmful content on social media is much harder to regulate. Information can be shared anonymously, copied endlessly, and spread across different platforms before authorities can respond. Even when false information is removed, the damage has often already been done. Therefore, social media represent a unique challenge because its harmful effects are difficult to trace, control, and reverse. For these reasons, we maintain that social media is a greater threat than traditional political corruption. Its ability to influence millions of people instantly deepen social divisions, distort public discourage, damage civic engagement, and evade effective regulation makes it one of the most significant challenges facing modern democracy today. To conclude, democracy depends on informed citizens, open discussion, and responsible political participation. While traditional political corruption remains a serious problem, its effects are usually limited to specific institutions, officials, or government system. Social media, on the other hand, reaches millions of people instantly and has the power to shape how citizens think, feel, and make political decisions. Through this debate, we have shown that social media spreads misinformation quickly, creates echo chambers, prioritize popularity over expertise, and can be easily misused through anonymous accounts and AI-generated content. These factors weaken public trust, divide society, and damage the quality of democratic decision making. Unlike corruption, which can often be investigated and prosecuted through legal institution, harmful content on social media is far more difficult to trace, regulate, and reverse. Therefore, we firmly believe that social media poses a great threat to democracy than traditional political corruption. Its speed, scale, and influence over public opinion make it one of the most dangerous challenges facing modern democracies today. For all these reasons, we strongly support the motion. Thank you.
My name is Rinda, and I stand here today as the final speaker for the opposition side. Listening to the government side, especially Speaker 3, I almost felt like I was watching a sci-fi movie about robots taking over the world. They want us to believe that humanity is completely helpless against short video algorithms. But ladies and gentlemen, a fake news post can be debunked with a single Google search. Can you debunk a corrupt politician who just bribed a judge with millions of dollars using a Google search? Of course not. The government is panicking over the smoke while ignoring the house that is actively on fire due to corruption. This is why we must oppose. Now, let us address the arguments brought forward by the third speaker of the government, Farah. She painted a dystopian picture where citizens are mindless zombies, completely controlled by short-form videos, algorithms, and artificial intelligence. She claims that social media is the root of bad human behavior, causing massive riots and dangerous echo chambers. However, this is a massive historical and logical error. Mass polarization, bloody revolutions, and violent riots existed centuries before the internet was ever invented. They were not caused by algorithms, they were caused by poverty, systematic injustice, and deeply corrupt elites who abused their power. Social media does not create the frustration that leads to unrest. Traditional political corruption does. When corrupt officials embezzle public funds and break public trust, they create the real-world suffering that makes people angry. Social media is simply the platform where the pre-existing pain is expressed. Furthermore, the third speaker expressed deep fear regarding the rise of AI and the difficulty of regulating anonymous users online. But she overlooks a crucial truth about democracy. Technology adapts, social learns. Today, tech platforms, independent fact checkers, and digital literacy campaigns are actively fighting back against deepfakes. But do you know who actually cannot be regulated or fixed? A justice system that has been completely bought out by traditional corruption. When corruption wins, politicians bribe the judges, buy the police, and dismantle anti-corruption agencies. You can log out of TikTok and you can report a fake post, but you cannot log out of a corrupt legal system that protects criminals while throwing innocent citizens in jail. Perhaps the most shocking and flawed claim made by the third speaker is that traditional corruption does not suppress voices and somehow allows for open discussion. This is completely backwards. Traditional corruption is the ultimate silencer of freedom. Throughout history, corrupt regimes have not used 15-second videos to control people. They have used embezzled state funds to buy weapons, monopolize the state media, bribe opposition leaders, and physically lock up or eliminate dissidents. Corruption doesn't create an environment for an open discussion. It creates an environment of fear where speaking the truth can cost you your life. It threatens the physical safety of anyone who dares to speak out. The government also laments that social media ruins democratic participation by prioritizing popularity over expertise and damaging the mental health of our youth. But let us look at the alternative. Before social media, traditional media like TV networks and newspapers were entirely monopolized by wealthy, corrupt politicians. Social media broke that monopoly. For the first time in history, it gave a free, global platforms to marginalized communities, whistleblowers, and independent journalists to expose government wrongdoing. Yes, there is noise, and yes, it can be overwhelming, but it has also triggered massive real-world anti-corruption movements worldwide. The anxiety of the youth does not come from watching entertaining videos. It comes from the helpless economic future caused by a bankrupt, corrupt government. In conclusions, ladies and gentlemen, let us look at what this debate truly comes down to. The government side has built the entire case on a foundation of fear of new technology, fear of algorithms, and fear of the digital age. They have spent their time arguing against the symptoms of a broken society while completely ignoring the disease that causes it. Throughout this debate, we have shown that social media is merely a reflection of humanity. It is a tool. If the public conversation on social media is toxic, if it is filled with anger and polarization, it is because traditional political corruption has been broken the real world. When corrupt leaders steal public funds, destroy public education, and weaponize the legal system for personal gain, they create the very poverty, desperation, and injustice that people scream about online. Social media did not invent corruption. It merely gives the victims of corruption a voice to shout into. Let us weigh the two threats side by side for their final time. On one hand, the government fears a misleading social media post or an AI deepfake. But a misleading post can be debunked by a single independent fact check within minutes. A citizen can choose to turn off their phone, delete an app, and cross check information with reputable sources. On the other hand, we have traditional political corruption. You cannot log out of a corrupt economy that has left your family jobless. You cannot swipe away a corrupt judge who has been bribes to throw innocent people in jail. And you cannot mute a corrupt regime that uses embezzled state wealth to buy weapons and physically silence those who fight for freedoms. If a democracy loses its foundation to corruption, does not matter how perfect or regulated our social media platforms are, because there will be no true democratic institutions to protect. Corruption does not just influence the mind of the voter, it destroys the very ballot box the voter stands at. It sells the laws to the highest bidder and bankrupts the future of the youth. Social media may change how we talk, but traditional political corruption destroys the very country we are talking about. Therefore, because we choose to fight the true cancer of democracy rather than its digital shadow, we stand firmly, proudly, and logically with the opposition. The motion must fall. Thank you.
Alright, thank you for both team for sharing their arguments today. And that's all from us. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Itu Nazril, kenapa Nazrilnya yang hilang?
Oh, ini gimana nyetingnya, Jir? Kok jadi aku yang backgroundnya?
Bentar, gak kedengeran. Kok aku nggak ada? Lah.
Nanti agak nge-rap ya guys. Soalnya cuma 40 menit. Aduh, bateraiku tinggal dikit, gak ada CSS-an.
Manusia green screen taigu.